Yep, go.
All right. So the history of Emerging Futures Food Solutions program came out of a drawdown workshop from Pachamama Alliance back in 2018. And a group of us formed in Willow's living room, and Ann Barton, Angelina Cook, and myself were in that room. And Flavia wasn't quite there with us yet, but she was coming. And there was about 15 very dedicated people who wanted to look at what Food Solutions does. And I'm not going to go through that because Flavia is going to give that story. But in a nutshell, 30 to 40% of our food in the United States is wasted. And it's not just wasted at the landfill, which is what happens, that's the number, but it's wasted all the way down the food chain. So all the way from the supply line, from the farmers on down. And this is a big problem. And it's number 3 in turning around global warming by 2050. So we took a look at what we could do locally. And the business side of this came out of Ann Barton wanting to reach out to restaurants to help them up their game. And we learned about what DEQ is doing and what they had a workshop in 2019, and we helped put it on in Medford. And it was very well attended. Restaurants loved the networking piece. They loved the information that they were able to take back. I've heard that Newman Hotels has implemented all the trainings throughout their establishments. And we decided we would follow up on this, and we applied for a DEQ grant, and we got funded to do a food solutions project, and we reenacted Emerging Futures as a local nonprofit, moving it from Nevada, where it did other projects, to here. And it's basically a new local nonprofit. Paul Sheldon is our president, and Hogan Shuro is our interim executive director. And we are dedicated to regenerative principles, regenerative economy, regenerative agriculture. And what does that mean for businesses? And that's what today's program will be. How to service, we've been in a pandemic. This is a big year. How are we moving forward? What are we excited for this summer? I've been fully vaccinated. I've already been out to restaurants. So I'm really excited that I feel comfortable to be back out again. And I know a lot of the population feels the same way. So this is going to be a good summer. We want to be here to help you. We're going to offer lots of different tools for that. So that's kind of how we came to be. And we've also, in putting our grant together for DEQ, we also put together a group of food champions. These are restaurants that worked with us throughout the year to put this program together. One of those is Jamie from Recology, who's in the room. And people like Food Angels. And again, Flavia will go over some of this in her presentation this morning. So, but we had restaurants that came, and we met 3 times over the last year. We had a City of Ashland grant in addition to the DEQ grant. So we want to thank all of our sponsors: DEQ, City of Ashland, Recology, the Bellevue Grange, Sonic, Southern Oregon Food Solutions, and Pachamama Alliance for helping make this event happen. With that, I'd like everyone to go around, introduce yourself, and share who you are and what you are, one thing you're excited about coming out of the pandemic and doing your work this year for your businesses. Who would like to start? So your name, who you're with, and what you're hoping to get out of this year.
I'll start. I'm Paul Sheldon. In addition to being the president of Emerging Futures, I had 2 restaurant enterprises in talent. One was Tauntaun's Cafe, which was a gluten-free vegetarian cafe with a community kitchen that hosted between 6 and 10 local food businesses. And then we were also in the process of building a restaurant and event venue that was going to serve a pizza menu and accommodate 175 to 200 people for events, both of which burned to the ground on September 8th. And so we've been in recovery mode for the year. I didn't actually realize how emotionally devastating it was to lose such big parts of who I thought I was in the business world and in the community, but it's taken many months to let it sink in and to begin to recover. We're not going to reopen Tauntauns. The owner of the building there is going to rebuild in a different mode, but we are still going to do the pizza restaurant and event venue on the corner of Talent and Main in Talent. So we're very excited about that. And my keyword for the year is emerging. We are re-emerging in so many ways.
Elise, how about you?
I'll take my mask off real quick. Hi, I'm Elise Higley. I'm here as a representative for Our Family Farms. I was an executive director for many years and also serve on the board currently. And for those of you that don't know, Our Family Farms, we ran and led the campaign to ban GMO crops in 2014. And I've worked on regenerative farming and local food solutions for quite a few years. So I was excited to be part of this conversation. I'm also a farmer. I have Oshala Farm with my husband, Jeff, in the Applegate. We grow 80 something different medicinal herbs, both dry and fresh, and we ship nationwide. And yeah, I've also done a lot of local food work with Thrive over the years with Wendy on a grant, actually connecting farmers to, basically our grant was to increase local food in grocery stores where people were already shopping. So I worked with a lot of grocery store buyers and farmers to create contract growing and things like that. So yeah, so I'm excited to be part of this, so thank you.
And Elise, maybe you can put your contact information in your name so that people watching this can know how to reach you. Elise is also your contact for food procurement for restaurants. So if you want to grow a specialty crop just for your restaurant, a special basil or a special squash, she's your person to contact. She'll help you connect with a farmer who can grow for you seasonal crops that would be special on your menu. Okay, thank you, Elise. Jamie.
Hi. Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm a Waste Zero specialist for Recology. I educate and do outreach with Ashland and Talent on how to prevent waste for both businesses and residents, and also teach people how to recycle properly. I think you asked us to say what we're most looking forward to. You know, my son plays baseball and it's been a little awkward with, they rope the stands off, and it'll be nice to sit in the stands again and watch my son play baseball in the sun. So.
And Jamie's also our current partner in certifying restaurants in being a Waste Zero business and getting some publicity for you that way. A Falafel Republic, we'll show you a picture in a little bit. What is been certified this year is our first restaurant, and we're really excited about that. And you'll hear more about how she can certify your restaurant and how you can get in the regenerative directory, where we're going to go after grants to help promote Ashland and the Ashland restaurants that are working on being a Waste Zero establishment.
I'd like to comment if I may.
Yes, Alan Sandler, your turn.
Yeah, it's my daughter talking, so I could talk to her directly. But, you know, I've been following what you've been doing all along, and I think it's great. I own quite a bit of property in Ashland and elsewhere, and there's quite a few restaurants involved in all. But, you know, in reality, we used to have a film company in Hollywood, and we did a lot of work with the government, with the United States government, and China and Japan and Russia and so on and so on. But the US State Department has a division where they help countries with just what you're trying to do. I forget exactly what US something, if you check with the State Department. But now that we've gone back and we've joined up the climate change group again worldwide, we know that America, United States, can't do this alone. If they don't get the cooperation worldwide, you're not going to change any of this climate change situation. This country is one of the, per capita, one of the best in handling climate change than almost any other country. So to me, it seems like what you have, especially with the idea that Paul was talking about, making a film out of this, which you don't really have to produce anything major, just kind of tell them what you're doing and get them to distribute it worldwide through through the State Department's position through possibly the climate change group. I just mentioned that because I've had a lot of experience in that area, and Julie knows it. And if she wants to talk to me more about it later, that's fine. That's about all I have to say. I think what you're doing is great. It just needs to get to the right people, and psychologically, it's hard to get to people that are suffering. And they're more concerned about getting their business going than they are maybe saving food at this particular moment. And so I think the combination of getting the government involved at a national level and getting the climate change group that we've just rejoined, I think you'd have great success in getting to those people.
Alan, can you mention some of the businesses that are in your buildings?
Okay. You got Martino's, you got Unami. These are in different buildings. I don't know if you know who Unami is. Unami is the Japanese restaurant. Martino's is the Italian. Yeah, and yeah, they are. And then we have Mezcal, which is a Mexican restaurant on the plaza at the 3rd floor. Then we have a brand new one, which they're too busy to talk to you, but I'm going to get them together with Julie. It'll be probably the biggest, most successful restaurant in Southern Oregon. We have a Northern Italian restaurant called La Brocola. And the chef is coming from LA area. It was a chef that a lot of the Hollywood socialite people, the actors and so forth, would go and visit. And I think some of them are going to come up to see him because he's very, very well known down there. He's, we call him, he's like a celebrity chef. And their food's going to be spectacular. And they'll probably open in May. They're doing a tremendous decorating and rebuilding the whole restaurant. So that used to be where Loft was. And then we have I always forget the name. Their coffee house on the Calais in one of our buildings. They have the coffee, Griffin Creek Coffee has that. It's a bakery and so forth. And they just reopened now. And this last weekend, to great, everybody was happy that they opened up. So these will all be people, but they're all fighting for their life. So I think the concept is how to get to them where it doesn't really mean a lot of, it doesn't take a lot of their time. I don't even know if they would have an hour to sit and talk to you about this because they don't know enough. So it's really a matter of, I think, with these people, getting them down, making appointments. I can help try and make them with you, Julie, on a one-on-one basis. Or maybe you say, I only need 15 minutes. If you have a little film to give them, or video would be great. So those are those restaurants. We have some in other parts of the country, but that wouldn't do you any good right now.
Thanks very much. Yes, I didn't mention my other businesses around the country either.
Okay.
Local
right.
focus today.
Chris, can you speak about Caldera, please? And what you're excited for?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I've been supporting Emerging Futures over the last year for a bunch of the programs that we're working on. And one of the other hats that I wear is as front of house manager of Caldera Brewery. One of the big challenges that we're facing right now is staffing, actually. People are reluctant to come back to work. And so in an effort to reduce costs because of the reduced business, because of the pandemic, and also because of the lack of staffing, we've gone to counter service, which is a new and interesting challenge. So I'm looking for, what I'm looking forward to is the new normal settling in, because the last year has felt like a lot of change and a lot of adapting to change. And I think that has been very stressful on those of us that are working in the service industry. Many of us are not vaccinated, and people come in and remove their masks and eat, and there's a lot of sort of low level stress that continues throughout a shift. And so I'm looking forward to all this settling in so that we can at least, learn sort of what the new normal is, if you will. So yeah, that's me. Sorry about the video, y'all. I'm dealing with bandwidth issues, so but good to see all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris, very much. And so we've got Flavia Franco.
Hi, yeah. What I'm hoping for this year is I'm very excited about the change in the White House administration and its approach to be more aggressive in attacking climate change and to show leadership for the world, because if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it, because we've been the big polluter all along. So I'm excited, looking forward to see how this gets rolled out.
Actually, we have not been the biggest people that mess up the environment. Like I said before, America's #1 in all the whole world, probably, mainly of the major countries that are in a better shape than most, even though we're proceeding to do more. So, but this talk about, we're the biggest polluters, this is the kind of political things that if we get into, we're not going to make any headway, I don't think.
Yeah, thank you. Elaine, would you like to say a few words from DEQ? What are you excited about going forward? And can you talk to us, Elaine Blott from, and I always get your title a little confused, so if you can elaborate on your title. She's the analyst director
Sure.
of waste for the state.
So I'm like Chris Byrne this morning. I'm having some bandwidth issues, sharing internet with my husband, who does a lot of work with large online data sets. So yeah, my name is Elaine Blatt. My official title is Senior Policy and Program Analyst at Oregon DEQ. So that's kind of a mouthful. I lead our work on sustainable consumption efforts, and because DEQ places an extremely high priority on preventing food waste, I literally spend, I'm going to guess, 3/4 of my time working on a variety of different preventing food waste issues, and have been doing this for like the last 5 years since I joined DEQ. Met Julie and other folks at Emerging Futures several years ago, and you all just did such a bang up job helping us with our workshop down there in Medford. It was a pleasure. And so I will say that in 2021, I'm looking forward to professionally to being able to get back to work directly with folks like you all, and out of my home office and back into the world. And I'm also looking forward from a food waste standpoint to working again more directly with restaurants, as you guys are trying to do here, moving forward. And then I'll just say personally, my husband and I have typically come down to Ashland at least once, often twice a year for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. So I am personally looking forward to coming down to your neck of the woods later in the year. And in fact, I think we said when the Shakespeare Festival is up and running, we're going to get tickets. It doesn't matter what the plays are, we're just going to come.
Thank you. And by the way, Chris, Burns was at the 2019 workshop.
Yes, I do remember that.
Caldera. So, and we didn't know each other then. I mean, the way we know each other now. So that was kind of auspicious. We actually met Chris because Angelina and Paul and I were in Caldera talking about our program. We came there for a meeting, and he came, and I was asking him, would he like to participate? And he says, well, this is what we've already done. And hopefully he can share some of what they did with that workshop. He actually went back and retooled the whole restaurant with what he learned, Elaine. So it was really useful for them. In terms
We
of
met again the day before everything shut down the first time.
Yes, that was, we
On
met
the
the day
15th.
before everything shut down. That's right. And we had to cancel.
Yep.
Do you want to take a minute, Chris, and just share with Elaine what you did? Because the story you told me when I met you about the bread and how you changed that.
Yeah, there
cool.
are minor changes that I was able to suggest to, with it. I always pitch it as saving costs, because if you can tell a restaurant that you're helping to save on the bottom line, then that's really what the motivator is going to be, with the side motivator being the environmental morals, if you will. And so I noticed that a lot of bread was coming back from salads and soups and pastas that wasn't being eaten, and also retraining the staff to ask whether they would like lettuce, tomato, onion, and pickle, otherwise known as an L-top, with their burgers and things like that. So that we were putting less food waste into our waste stream, avoiding it from the beginning, which we do all of our in-house baking. So it was saving on our baking costs and also the prep to make those L-tops and all that. And so those are some immediate changes that we were able to make.
And little did we know when we met him that Chris Byrne also had a green MBA from New School in California.
Wow. So Chris,
Many
you have
hats.
a great story. That was fantastic. Thank you.
And maybe at Lillian, maybe at some point we can record the story, or you guys we can look at how to record stories at restaurants.
Yes,
I
that would
actually
be great.
have a friend here who does story recording that I can connect you with if you don't know someone who does that. All right, Hogan, I think I'm turning it over to you. It's your turn. You want to share with us what you're hopeful about for the year, and Hogan Charot, our interim executive director.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, thanks, Julie. And thank you all for sharing that. I'm actually really enjoying getting to know a little more about everybody. Food is not my area. So this is all a new learning curve for me in many ways. My background is actually, I'm trained as a evolutionary anthropologist and taught at universities for years while running nonprofits as well, working in campaigns. I don't sleep a lot. So it leaves me time to do lots of things. But when I got the opportunity to work with Emerging Futures, I've worked on climate change issues for about the past 8 years at the state level, at local levels, organizing, being part of SOCAN's Southern Oregon Climate Action Now's board, and forming a political action committee called Rock Pack, where we work on state legislation having to do with climate change. And so that connection there, Julie and I have known each other for a couple of years, and it made sense. And so I was really happy to join forces with everybody. And I'm really excited with what Emerging Futures is doing. I think that as I expressed to my 16-year-old daughter, if I have one word for this upcoming year, it is hopeful. All the way from our new administration down, I am hopeful that we will, as Chris said, we'll find a new normal. I don't want the old normal. I want a new normal, and hopeful that we'll find that, and that we'll all kind of get settled into a better way to do things. And I think that some of the steps we're taking here are the ways locally to start making that happen. So that's where I'm at. I think we're gonna move along, and I'll talk a little bit. I'll just keep the conch, as it were, and I'll talk a little bit about our programs. So we've been working really hard to develop programs that make sense, that don't reinvent the wheel when it's not necessary, and are adaptable to our local community, and are responsive to what people really need. We've got I think some really good ones coming online. The first that I'll talk about a little bit, and I'll share my screen here and pull up the PowerPoint. Let's see, which one do I want to? There we go. Okay. So our Waste Zero business programs, we've put together kind of a combination of different programs that folks can be involved in at different levels, at different kind of, I think I like how Julie has described it as different stages along their journey as a business and as an entity. And we've kind of put them all in the package of Waste Zero business programs. I put a screenshot and the link to our website here. That's where people can go and they can register for these. What they do is they put down their interest in which programs they're interested in, and then I do a follow-up with them, and we get them rolling on where they go with that. So the first one, and I'm sorry that if they're cut off with the view, but that's the only way you can see my face with the PowerPoint slides. The Waste Zero Business Certification Program is our partnership with Recology that both Julie and Jamie had mentioned. Here you can see our first Waste Zero Business certified certified business for this year, Falafel Republic, which is one of our standard, I think, go-to lunch places in Ashland. At least for me, it is. And it's great to see them be so enthusiastic. And Buddy Blue there looks awfully enthusiastic. We won't talk about who's in the suit right now. But yeah, it's a great partnership. Recology already had this Waste Zero program going. I'm really grateful that they partnered with us on this, and we've expanded it for a certification process where we've added some more things that are specific for right now the food service. But the idea, I think, is for this to be a model that can be expanded to businesses no matter what their specialty is. You know, it allows us to really recognize those businesses in our community that are really making an effort to, as we say, striving to be zero waste. Excuse me. And then I think it also allows those businesses to build off of that and model for each other how to do this effectively. And that's all kind of, you know, the foundations for building this regenerative economy that we keep referring to, that Paul's going to kind of take us through more of those principles in just a little bit. But this is kind of one of those nice, what I think of as a foundational building block, where you start getting businesses to really buy into this idea. And we're really fortunate, I think, in Ashland and in a lot of the Rogue Valley to have business owners who already have this in their mind. They're looking for that little extra to how can we get, you know, more ideas to make this happen and be more effective. And I think that's where we in Recology and our partnership can step in and help folks. So I think this is going to be a really cool program. Julie, I want you to step in and add what you want to here. And then Jamie, if you have things that you'd like to pitch in, I'm all for the kind of round robin approach. So.
Thank you, Hogan. So what I was really excited for is I went out and talked to about 25 businesses over the last 2 weeks, face-to-face, inviting them to this workshop, 7 of which registered. And we're really excited, and several couldn't come, like even Sam was just busy today, not the right timing. They do get their prep done this morning. And what they all almost hands down, if I talk to the owner or manager, they want this certification and they want the one-on-one walkthrough, and they want to be in the directory, and they're really excited about this. So I'm really looking forward to registering people over the next, you know, few weeks and taking this then to the, you know, this is our pilot. We're launching this as a pilot project. Our aim is to start, you know, to get eight businesses signed in the next 2 months, and then roll it out bigger, even bigger next year, later on in this year. I'm not next year, but later in this year. I'm still in 29. I got to remember, we're now in the new normal. All right, Jamie, if you have anything else you want to say.
I'll just add that I'm really excited to have a partnership. You know, it's just more people on the ground getting people excited about reducing waste in this area. And I, you know, anticipate that, you know, if you look at the image here and you see the little Waste Zero badge, if you will. I want that to be a badge of honor. And I want people to see that the same way they would see in the window of a hotel, a TripAdvisor high rating. It's something that would encourage them to go to that restaurant because they are, prioritizing reducing waste. So I'm excited about it. I think this is a great union, and we'll see what happens.
It's a wonderful program, Jamie. We've been visualizing for years having badges like this achieve the status of kosher and halal.
Like they do in Singapore. So in Singapore, if you go to a Burger King, it will tell you your meat is kosher. Okay.
Okay, so I'm not going to go too far into this one because Paul's got a really nice complete approach, but kind of an overview again like the last one. We have our one-on-one Waste Zero business consultations, and that's really, I mean, this is Paul's wheelhouse, and so I feel like I'm speaking in front of the master here, but this is where it's using those regenerative business practice principles to figure out how to, ironically, like Chris Byrne was talking about, improve the bottom line while you're doing the right thing for the environment and your community. These are going to be one-on-one consultations for businesses where Paul and some other colleagues will go in, help them figure out what works best for them as a business. There is no such thing as a silver bullet, one size fits all. And that's one of the beauties of this approach, is that it allows how to apply those principles while being flexible for the needs of the specific business owners, and helping people put those principles into practice. And part of that will be helping them learn how to use and employ a Waste Zero calculator that Paul and Chris Byrne have developed over the past several months, and it will kind of continue to evolve. And again, the beauty of it is the flexibility of being able to alter it when you need to, improve upon it, and but it will allow those businesses to start getting a handle on how much they are wasting and how to make themselves more efficient. So this is going to be one of those great where opportunities for local businesses to get that kind of personalized approach, where the Waste Zero business certification is a little more, we've got a checklist and there's things that we kind of expect businesses to reach. This will be that one-on-one that allows them to reach that. So working really well together, these programs kind of just fold into one another, I think, really well. Paul, do you have anything more short that you want to say before you get into your talk in a few minutes? I think you might be on mute.
Mostly what I want to say is that really what we're talking about is just good business. That's my favorite response when we go to speak with someone who is a Fox News watcher who thinks that Al Gore is a subversive that's trying to ruin business. When we really sit down and talk about these principles of regenerativity and resilient business, they say, "Oh, well, we do that because it's just good business."
Excellent, thanks. And then this is our working title. We'll see if it ends up being the title for the directory. And then Julie has mentioned this, and I think it's worth spending a few minutes on to talk about. This is kind of the third pillar there of building a business directory for these businesses that are being regenerative in their principles or striving to waste zero, and are really our leaders in the community of how to build this economy that's going to work for Southern Oregon. I mean, that's Paul hit on it when he said it's good business. that translates into successful and sustainable businesses and actually having jobs for folks in Southern Oregon, which is a pretty important thing. And all of this works together. And I think the directory that we're building allows us, again, to shine a light on those folks. It's going to be a searchable directory where you can go in and you can look at, based on certain traits, what you want in your business, but striving to waste zero will be one of those primary things. And, you know, it'll allow, it will help with tourism where people can, again, you're going to a city you're coming down a lane for Shakespeare and you want to know which restaurants do we want to hit while we're there. This directory allows you to just hop in and find them. And so I think all three of these working together really build a nice kind of structure for how to start recognizing and promoting those waste zero businesses in our community.
And I just like to add one thing there, that it's easy to get in. All you have to be able to do, there's 3 different categories that the certification looks at. One is, you know, your business place, one is how you handle your food, and another is how you work with your employees and customers. And it's really quite simple to get in the directory. You just have to check off 2 in each of the categories to get in. And that puts you on the journey with a goal that you're setting for the year. Of course, if you're an expert, you're going to check all of the boxes, and, you know, maybe that, you know, you'll be up there with Falafel Republic and the Ashland Food Co-op that are already in the directory and already been through our one-on-ones and our certification program. Looking forward to many more of you joining us.
Awesome. Okay. Do we want to take a couple of minutes and let people stretch a little bit before we get into our experts? And I think we might have a new person in the room.
Hey, Chris Hardy, one of our local farmers and our partner, one of our food champion partners. Also with Our Family Farms, and he owns 3 farms in town. And if any restaurants in the room are interested in a customized product like a specialty herb or something like that, you might want to talk with Chris.
And I just want to say he's wielding a blade, so he can say whatever he wants. Chris, you want to introduce yourself really quickly? You might be on mute.
Oh, there we go. I think I figured it out. Yeah, just processing some chestnuts here for flour. Some locally grown chestnuts. I am excited to be farming seeds, and I know that we all need seeds to grow food. And so we're working on varieties that are mostly grains and legumes and lots of vegetables and herbs. And trying to adapt them to our climate here in Southern Oregon to make sure that we don't have to go to the internet or go to other places to access good seeds for our farmers. And we're focusing a lot on nutrient dense varieties and newer varieties and a lot of heritage varieties of grains. So we're growing over 50, 60 different varieties of heritage grains in partnership with the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. And we're growing rice this year. And so if anybody has a de-huller out there, greatly needed, we're going to need a de-huller here by probably about August to de-hull einkorn, emmer, spelt, and some of these rice varieties that have come from Central Asia that we're growing, that have come from all over the world, as far away as Uzbekistan and Pakistan and Ethiopia, places like that.
And I want to just share that in Chicago, many of the restaurants are partnering with the farms in the outside of Chicago area to have their specialty grain grown for their restaurant. So anyways,
Mm,
Thank you, Chris.
yeah, thank you, Julie.
So yeah, let's take about 5 minutes and let folks just kind of stand up, stretch, whatever you need to do. Run and grab some water like I did. And then we'll come back and jump back into it. I think Paul's got some things to talk to us about. Okay. Hope everybody grabbed the sustenance they needed. And I hope it was locally sourced food. Uh, so I think if you're ready, Paul, let's just get into it.
I was born ready. We're going to talk about the principles of the emerging regenerative economy, which is also sometimes referred to as a resilient economy. We used to call it sustainability, which got branded as environmental and green and all that. And I'm particularly sensitive to the kinds of things that Alan was pointing out earlier, that the political nature of some of the terms and phrases that we use, because for the last 10 years, I've been working on greening America's prisons and jails. I wrote the American Correctional Association's standard and policy on sustainability oriented and environmentally responsible practices in correctional institutions around the country. And when we started working on prisons and jails, we realized that they weren't interested in doing the right thing because it was the right thing, because their mission is to protect public safety and to protect the security of the staff and the people in their institutions. And if they're concerned about anything other than that, it's budget and how to save money. And so that's really what we're going to look at when we talk about our one-on-one visits and the food waste calculator that we've developed for use in evaluating ways to save money. Because what we found was, without talking about global warming or climate change, without citing examples from California, Oregon, or Colorado, when we talk with people about saving money, that was really worth it. And when people implement recycling and resource efficiency and materials efficiency programs, they almost always save money. But when we talk about the principles of regenerative economy, we really do have 8 different ways of basically saying the same thing. If you can just go on to principle number 1, Hogan. And in our prior webinars, Hunter Lovins has done a much better job of presenting these principles of a regenerative economy than I can. So I'm going to go over them very quickly here, because this is really just intended to provide context for the other things that we're going to say. So the first principle is right relationships, and that basically knowing your neighbors, but not just your human neighbors, but the natural systems upon which our lives depend, and being able to recognize nature and human cultures more broadly by reflecting opportunities for cooperation and healthy interactions that make profitability sustainable in the long term. Number 2, part of what we're talking about here is viewing wealth holistically, because most of the businesses in Southern Oregon are not just in business to make money. They're in business in Southern Oregon because they want to live here. And looking at wealth holistically means looking beyond the financial bottom line to consider other ways of evaluating success in business. Now, that doesn't mean to neglect the bottom line, because in the studies that we've done on triple bottom line, we found that the financial bottom line always overshadows people and planet as a measure of success in business. If you're not profitable, you're not going to be around for very long unless you have some kind of big money behind you. And so measuring other forms of wealth is important because, for example, your employees are a form of wealth. Your customers are a form of wealth. The rule of law is a form of wealth. Local food is a form of wealth. One of the reasons that the Rogue River Valley is so desirable as a place to live is that we do have regional food sources that make us very resilient in terms of an economy. Let's go on to the next principle. The third principle is businesses that are innovative, adaptive, and responsive. The most popular example of this, of course, is Eastman Kodak, which was really committed to printing photographs on paper and became a memory of history because of that. And there are many other examples of businesses that reinvented themselves because they recognized that what they'd been selling wasn't what people wanted and wasn't what the world had evolved towards. And so recognizing that we're coming out of a pandemic into an emerging economy that's not going to go back to normal. It's not going to go back to the way it was before. It's going to be a new way of doing things. And there may not ever be a normal. There may be just a new resilience, a new responsiveness to the changing conditions of being in business. And so the application is clear here. People have a knack for solving problems in creative ways. We're going to come, for example, our pizza restaurant in Talent is no longer going to emphasize indoor dining. We're going to design ways to create dining and events that is largely out of doors on a seasonal basis that can be housed indoors for heating in ways that create new airflow. And we don't know what's next, but resilience is really an important aspect. Next slide. The fourth principle is empowered participation. And this is really getting beyond top-down authoritative practices and principles. And we recognize this in correctional facilities when we were talking with environmental radicals in places like Indiana and Kansas, where prison administrators were saying, hey, we're down to 1 garbage bag of trash a month instead of 120 dumpsters. What do we do with it? We want to be zero waste. And one of the ways they accomplished that was by engaging their staff and their residents in innovative ways of how do we do this better. The 5th principle is honoring community and place. And that's something that Rogue Valley businesses are really good at, recognizing that we're living on land that was occupied by people before the Europeans arrived, and honoring and recognizing those people, honoring the fish and the bears and the eagles that people come here for, recognizing that our locality is unique and worthy of celebration. And businesses recognize that they're not just a place to generate profits for the landlords and the owners, but they're a gathering place where community happens. People come to the business because it has good food, in our example of food-oriented businesses, but also because they like the staff, or they know somebody who works there, or they enjoy the menu, and they like to hang out and enjoy their moment in that business. Next slide. The 6th principle is edge effect abundance, which is an odd phrase, but it's really talking about how innovation and cross-fertilization happen around the edges. The fertility of the oceans is in the tide pools, those smelly estuaries where the little fish breed and then go out to the ocean to become big fish. And the same is true in business. Many regions make the mistake when they think about economic development of trying to bring in a new employer that's going to employ 300 or 3,000 people in order to support the regional economy. But that's not really where new businesses happen. New businesses happen with 1 or 2 people getting started and then growing into something bigger. And we found this in Boulder County in Colorado when we were looking at GMO crops on the green belt around Boulder to talk about, is it appropriate to be growing GMO crops? We looked at one farm that had 1,500 acres that employed 3 people year round in a crop rotation of corn, soy, hops, and fallow over the years. And that farm employed 3 people year round. Down the road was the 5-acre Black Cat farm that supported Black Cat Cafe in Boulder, which had 5 acres under organic farming, and they were employing 12 people year round on their 5-acre farm. What is that like for the local economy? Let's go on to principle 7, which is robust circulatory flow. This is the regenerative economy that mimics the metabolic process of resilient living systems. Nature has no waste. Everything is supply for some other form of life or some other process. And when we implement recycling and materials management efficiency, we find that almost everything that flows through can be reused in some way. And the aspiration to zero waste in restaurant businesses is solid, especially if we can implement neighborhood scale composting and the circular economy, where we recognize that our waste may be the supply for somebody else's business, and setting up our businesses in that way. If we look on a grand scale, once again, going back to correctional institutions in Ohio, the state prison system teamed up with the Ohio State football stadium to achieve 98% recycling of everything that flows through the football stadium. And part of that is by controlling the inflow of what is offered to people who participate there. And so recognizing that circulatory flow and setting up systems within the community to do in-vessel composting or neighborhood scale or business district composting, for example, is a wonderful way to do that. Sweden does district heating also, where all the buildings on a block are heated by one plant rather than having a furnace in every building. Let's go on to the last principle, which is seeking balance. And what we're really talking about here is all of these principles are different facets of the same gem. And so recognizing that we have to balance all of these principles with nature and recognize balance as an identity. That's why this Waste Zero certification is so important, not only because it saves money, but because it recognizes a business is the kind of place that people want to patronize, the kind of place that the best employees want to work. The best talent will stick around because there's a balance between making a profit and managing the business in a responsible, fun, elegant, artful way. And that's a theme that runs through all of the regenerative principles. Probably the best resource out there today is A Finer Future by John Fullerton and Hunter Lovins and Stuart Wallace and Anders Wijkman, from which these principles are taken, and they're propagated by John Fullerton's Capital Institute to recognize that capital, the people who invest in a community, the people who own the buildings and control the money flow, are interested in resilience and regenerativity for long-term sustainability. And what's going to come out of this pandemic as businesses reemerge into vibrancy is just that spirit of resilience and a regenerative economy that allows us all to stick around where we love to be. That's about enough for now. We're going to talk a little bit more later on about the specific calculator and the one-on-one visits to do what I call a food discovery audit process. In other words, to look at our materials flow and our energy flow and our water flow through food-oriented businesses in ways to discover opportunities to save money or increase profits. And that'll be a subject for a subsequent conversation. Hogan, back to you. You're muted.
Let me see. There we go. Thanks, Paul. Are there any questions or anybody want to add anything? Any thoughts off the top of your head for Paul? Alan?
Yeah, well, yeah, I did. I love what Paul had to say. As a matter of fact, as one of the people that, you know, are interested in regenerative everything, the whole concept of wealth and so forth is what he's talking about. If they don't have that, they're, you know, some will do great and some will do terrible, but basically that's a really good program. The only thing that we have that we're not covering that I can see is, and I think the gentleman from Caldera mentioned it, the restaurants, not just the restaurants, but all of the commercial spaces are having trouble getting people to work for them for two reasons. Number one, they're getting money that they don't need. They're getting money so it's cheaper not to go to work for a while. But more than that is that they need more incentive to come in. Like a lot of people are growing pots, they get a lot more money per hour than the other people can afford to pay them. So I don't know what the real answer is, but I know that I'm hearing it from just about every one of our tenants that it's really hard to get help. And I think that if there was something added to these principles, these 8 principles or whatever you're having, where you could talk about coming up with more of a business-like concept of getting people to work with you. For example, some sort of a profit sharing, some sort of an incentive, as against just, oh, you're getting minimum wage, or you're getting 15 bucks an hour, or 10, or whatever it happens to be. I think that these people would like to see incentive where it means something. Now, B.C. McMillan, who is a very dear friend of mine, died a week and a half ago. He was one of the restaurateurs that was really, really great here. And he gave great incentives to his people. He never really had trouble getting people working for them. And so I don't know exactly the program, won't go into it now, but there should be something that could help the businesses, not just restaurants, but restaurants primarily, because is to how do they motivate people to come and work for them. That's all. Anyway, I love what's going on. Thank you.
Wonderful insights. Thank you, Alan.
That's a really, really good point. And I want to share something about Beezy's that touched my heart. I was volunteering for Rogue Food Unite, which is a wonderful resource and that came about due to the fires. That was a group that formed to gather donations and FEMA support and state of Oregon support to get food to the fire victims. And they hired the restaurants. And the restaurants in the Rogue Valley are still providing 2 meals a day regularly at the hotels where the fire victims are still residing, waiting for housing to show up and as it's being built. And I was there handing out the meals, and that night it was Beezy's turn, and they had 30 meals delivered there. They were wonderful, choice of vegetarian, vegan, and meat, and it's wonderful. And the delivery person was beaming. He just said, "Thank you so much for being here. You have saved my job this year. Thank you." And in addition to that, they were very happy that the food not only went to the fire victims, but because there was an abundance of sharing, a lot of the hotels that were offering this program, the staff got a meal while they were there. I, as a volunteer, got to bring a meal home. It was just a really great generosity all the way around. And so I think that that's part of it.
Yeah, you
Hey,
take.
Julie, this is Elaine. Can I just interject?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a fascinating conversation about the issue of how you engage your employees and how you can attract employees to come work in your business. And I just wanted to provide some information. I can't remember which National Restaurant Association does this, but they do an annual survey of a bunch of issues surrounding food service. And one of the interesting things they found in a recent survey, now that we've been in COVID, it was probably in 2019 that this survey was, or at least the results of the survey I've last seen. But what the survey found is that young people today are very interested in working for businesses that share their values. And so I would say that it could be a very positive thing for restaurants in your area to be publicizing that they have these conservation values, and that in and of itself might be a way to attract workers.
Yes, absolutely. And that axiom of being the kind of business that the best talent wants to work for, where people come to work not just because of the paycheck, but because they enjoy working with the people they work with, and they get properly acknowledged for their contribution, not just as an employee, but as a participant in the community. That really helps. Youth involvement, ties to the schools, connections with the traditional communities of the First Nations. All those are ways to reach out. And what Julie was saying, helping victims of emergencies and disasters, reaching out to seniors and elders who are in need, who are dependent. Those are the things that make people want to come to work. Study after study shows that people, although the paycheck is a sine qua non, what they cite as the reason that they keep the job, or the reason they keep coming, are all these other reasons besides what and how much they get paid. Yes, the profit sharing and the employee stock ownership plans and those kinds of things have to be in the background, and they have to be able to compete with other lifestyle issues in their industry. But beyond that, what people talk about is these other squishy factors about the identity and the affinity that they have for being in this business, in this community. Thanks, Elaine.
Yeah, in fact, in the certification process, we have a section on this, and there is a slot for checking off, are you paying your employees a living wage? And we've kind of left that as a talking point, because some people say it's $15 an hour, but others say it's 26. At what level can you buy your own health insurance? Or is your employer providing that for you? And the statistics I've seen say $26 an hour and allow you to support yourself freely from any government support for families. And the other is family leave. One of the reasons Sam's manager from Falafel Republic isn't here today is because his wife is having a baby. So we say congratulations, and he has a family leave day. So. Oh, Paul, maybe this is a good transition also to talk about, to invite Elise in to talk about, how the farms can help in this way, since you've kind of outlined how this fits.
Well, I'm going to leave it to Hogan to manage the agenda here, because I'm excited to hear everybody this morning.
Well, I think, absolutely. We're open enough in time that, at least if you have anything that you'd like to add right now, but you can always add that in later. It's not to put anybody on the spot and impromptu presentation on anything.
I'm fine. I'm fine adding in later, whatever works for the flow.
Okay. Why don't we move on, and Jamie, do you want to talk a little bit? We don't have a particular slide for you. But you wanted to talk a little bit about how Recology can help businesses and the other things Recology is doing.
Yes. So I'm pretty sure
Let's do
everyone
this.
here knows that Recology is the company that picks up waste, recycling, and compost here locally in Ashland and Talent. And one of the services that we offer here is the commercial organics program. What that is restaurants, any establishment that has food scraps can participate in this program. It's the compost is then taken here locally to Rogue Compost, and it's actually very popular compost with local agriculture. To be a part of the program, all you need to do is just contact Ashland Recology, and our customer service representatives will set you up with a cart and a pickup schedule that suits the restaurant's needs. Things that can go in there are your standard, potato peelings, vegetable waste, anything that has not been processed or cooked yet. So we call that pre-consumer waste. What else? In the beginning of the presentation, when Julie was speaking, she said that, overall 30 to 40% of waste comes from food. And we know that according to the Environmental Protection Agency, that with restaurants, it's actually the waste that restaurants produce, 60 to 80% of it is food waste. So I'm excited that we're really tackling food waste in restaurants. We could tackle restaurants too if we wanted to. That'd be kind of fun. But and then the benefits of this are, it's going to lower the bottom line for the restaurant. So if you don't have this program and this food waste is going into your trash can, trash is charged at a much higher rate than composting, which as it should be. And, we're going to positively impact the environment. So, I think it's a no-brainer to get people signed up for this program. And I had my timer for 5 minutes and I forgot to set it. So I don't know how long I've been gone. And if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask them.
What's the name of the program again? And how do I call to get the pre-scrap pickup from my restaurant?
It's it's called the Commercial Organics Program. And how do you call? Was your question?
How do I sign up for it? Like,
okay.
Martino's asked me.
I
said call Recology, but I don't know. And that there's you mentioned there's a difference in cost or something like.
Yeah, well, so if you're not part of the program, that means unless you're doing something independent, your own thing with your compost, it's going into the trash. And because trash is charged at a much higher rate than a composting cart would be charged, that you're saving money. Does that make sense? Okay. So all anyone needs to do is contact local Recology. You can go on the website or you can call our local number. The number I could put in the chat if you'd like. It's just 482-1471. And the customer service representatives will help you determine how often you need pickup, it is, I believe we have one size of cart, but you could have multiple carts. So, yeah.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because I think that's a great plan. I didn't even know it was happening that way. But what about on the Calais, the walkway where the artisans people are?
Mm-hmm.
The restaurants on that street, on that thing, pretty much empty their stuff into a combined unit that the city offers that I think you service. Would that work in that dump area?
thank you for bringing that up. That's called Guanajuato.
Yes.
We call it the Guanajuato enclosure.
Yes.
And, you know, to be completely honest about that enclosure, it's a disaster because it's not monitored. And as you all probably know, turnover in restaurants happens often. And so we've got people who don't necessarily know that, you know, you can't put grease in the composting, you know, or whatever. And so it is a little bit of a mess. It'd be kind of tricky. I think that, you know, just off the top, without thinking it through fully, that it would be best for restaurants to have their own cart in their restaurant and not put it in the enclosure, because then if there's an issue, we know who it is and we can educate and communicate about it.
Yeah, but you know, you have more restaurants on that one block than you have probably in the entire city. And I think everyone would use it. So why doesn't Recology restructure that use with the city? The city will cooperate, I'm sure. You know, Adam Hanks would be all on board, city manager. So why don't you talk, or whoever, or somebody, I don't care who, talk about restructuring that so each person, each restaurant that takes that could have their own thing. So they have one, see, the reason they do that, it's so much easier to put it in one spot. But there's plenty of room there to put individual things if you wanted it. Anyway, I'm just commenting. I think you get every restaurant on that block to do it. And that's most of the restaurants in town.
Well, and we do want participation, but we don't necessarily want everyone to participate if they can't do it properly, because then it defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. And if the compost has, you know, meat in it, for instance, and then we have no one to hold accountable for that, and it ruins the entire collection of that material, then it doesn't work. So,
yeah, but I'm sure you could tell people exactly what it would be. Paul, certainly is brilliant at doing this. And if he were to be able to work with you guys and the city and to talk to the restaurants, I'll bet you wouldn't you want everyone to do it? I mean, if that's the case, you don't sit back and just say, well, you know, it's too hard. If that's the case, then there's no reason even talking about it.
I'm gonna jump in here really quickly. I think that's a good idea. I think this is one of those that this spurs possibilities of how to develop these things further. We're not gonna kind of solve the policy right at this moment. So
Alan has already signed me up. So
Yeah.
Jamie will follow up.
And for people viewing in, I think it's important, like, for example, Tom Beams has spoken to me about the use of, when he had his own can, I don't know about this enclosure thing, but last year he talked to me about being part of having his own Recology bin, and he filled it every day with pre-scrap. So, you know, that's a medium, would you call Sesame a medium-sized restaurant? It, you know, actually fills up one of those bins every day. So it is a huge savings to be part of that. And so I'm looking forward to helping with that, getting people signed up and helping with that as well, Paul.
And this is Elaine, and I'll just jump in because Jamie's raised a really important point, and if you guys could help out with that, and this is this issue of contamination, because a whole bunch of valuable waste streams can be destroyed because people, for a lot of you know, well-meaning people, put stuff in the wrong place because they think that that's the right place to put it. So I don't know what the answer is for your municipality, but I think there's definitely a role to play in educating people to ensure that the proper stuff goes in the proper bins, so that Recology can do the right thing with it in the end.
And
Yeah,
and
it's
the
an
right
area that's a great. I'm sorry, Julie.
Yeah, no, if the right thing is that if it is composted the way Jamie's described, it goes to rogue compost and it's then used in local people's gardens. And it's great because it provides that resource you were talking about, Paul, a waste that then becomes someone else's business. And that's really great for Southern Oregon.
And it's an area of great interest that is ripe for a community conversation as well, because these are not new issues in city dwelling. In the 1950s, Mayor Sam Yorty of Los Angeles campaigned on a platform of solid waste consolidation. because people had been putting out tin and glass to be picked up by recyclers in the 1950s. And they eliminated source separation, and he got elected mayor. And San Francisco as a municipality has succeeded in consolidating waste streams and then doing the separation offsite, but only because they have the economy of scale. In small towns and rural areas, that's not cost effective, and having to truck stuff miles eliminates the profitability of recycling. If you have to truck it all the way to Arcata or some other place, then the economy of scale is challenging. And I was deeply disappointed to see that Fire and Light in Arcata had gone under last year because they were recycling glass from the whole region and making beautiful glassware. But now another resource gone. So Jamie, we'll definitely continue this conversation. And Alan, I hope you don't mind if we call on you.
Absolutely, anytime. Otherwise, my daughter won't talk to me anymore.
I'd just like to add, one of the things that I'm feeling really encouraged about is a gathering just such as what we're doing today, because at the end of the day, we can tell people what to do. We can make a bunch of pretty signs, but at the end of the day, what I find really gets people making changes is actually connecting with them face to face, talking to them, getting them on board with what everybody else is interested in. And that's what this is seemingly all about right here. It's really connecting with the community. And so we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you. Jamie, you just gave a whole new initiative for the community to work on. So I think it's great. I think we've got a new project for Emerging Futures to take on, and I think we'll definitely be pulling Alan in as a consultant on that. And I think that there's some really good stuff that's coming out of this, and I'm really happy with it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think if you want, I can probably get the city through Adam Hanks and to the chamber to get really involved and get behind this. So call me when you want.
Cool.
Yeah, that would help a lot. Thank you.
Just to tout my dad's horn, because he won't do it himself. You were talking about outdoor gathering spaces, and my dad, one of the buildings I'm most proud that he's done is he worked with the city and Shakespeare to build that building that is also the Tudor Guild and the Martinos, and it opens onto the Shakespeare bricks and has that outdoor seating. And quite honestly, it was one of the restaurants I frequented the most during last year because I could go outside and have at least 10 feet around me, not just 6. And I felt safe, and I really enjoyed my meals there. So they had a really nice outdoor space. So Paul, on that note, and just in terms of buildings, my dad's a genius.
Okay. Flavia, would you like to share with us your ideas for today?
Sure. Let's see, are the
I'm going to pull up my screen.
Okay. So, while he's doing that, let me just introduce myself. I arrived in Ashland in 2017, and I will be a retired financial analyst later this year. And I'm with a partner who's been concerned about the environment since 1975, and I arrived at a level of concern more recently in 2006. And I got involved with Emerging Futures and other environmentalists in this area in 2019. And in February, I taught an OLLI class here called Understanding the Fight Against Climate Change. And I'm currently attending a Master Climate Protector class that is conducted by Southern Oregon Climate Action Network, or SOCAN. So I'm looking forward with much anticipation to the Biden administration's game plan and Oregon's game plan about mitigating climate change and adapting to what we cannot stop. So my speaking today gives me an opportunity. Even though I worked in restaurants in my early years, I cannot pretend to have tips on how to improve a restaurant's business. But what I can say is my perspective as a resident and a potential customer and a fellow citizen who wants to see our society make significant efforts to give future generations a chance to thrive and avoid misery. So basically, every day a person has choices to make, as does a business. And it's time to start making 100% green choices. Next slide. So let me start by showing this. It's where I want us to get to, which is really sustainability in our food system. Nature makes use of everything, and once life is done, dead things are broken back down into raw materials and used again. And there are no landfills in nature. So by working as a community together on this issue, we can get closer to this level. Next slide. So your businesses are very important to solutions to combat global warming. According to the author and editor of Project Drawdown, Paul Hawken, quote, no industry has a bigger impact on climate change than food and agriculture, both as a source of the problem and as a solution, end quote. Next slide. So the size of the problem of food waste is seriously bad because everyone on the planet, all 7.9 billion of us, contribute to the problem in one way or another. So, you know, please ask yourself while you're doing your business reviews, is there a greener choice that I can be making? As a financial analyst, I know about cost benefits analysis. And I've never seen on cost benefits analysis a line item for harm to future generations or harm to the environment. I also see, but I hope to see those kinds of line items going forward more and more. And I also know the expression of being penny wise and pound foolish. So on a large scale, let me recap an article that you can find on the Emerging Futures Facebook page that was posted on March 23rd from Yale Climate Connections. And it quotes from a report by the Director of Energy Policy Design and Nonpartisan Energy Environmental Policy. And this firm is called Energy Innovation, Policy and Technology. And the report is called Transforming the Economy Requires Us to Build and Deploy a Lot of New Stuff. So that report states that achieving the reduction goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement will create 3.1 million full-time jobs in the US by 2035. And it will boost the US GDP by $6.4 trillion by 2035. So the estimate assumes that these new workers will spend their income on food and other retail items. And in turn, it's going to create jobs in other sectors. So further, Project Drawdown estimates the direct economic benefits of meeting the Paris Climate Agreement targets would exceed the initial investment 5-fold. So from that article and other resources I came across when I was forming my own class content, and from what I'm learning through SOCAN, I would conclude that it makes economic sense as well as self-preservation sense to get on board the green train. And on the microeconomic scale, i.e. this region and restaurant businesses here, I can tell you about my restaurant experiences. What resonates with me, yes, tasty food and welcoming staff, but demonstrating community involvement and environmental thoughtfulness are big drivers too. So here are some examples. Rogue Food Unites is a great operation, which is helping those affected in the community by the fire. And if we know a restaurant is participating, that means a great deal to me. And participation in the Rogue to Go program means a lot to me too. We'd love to see more restaurants participate. Right now, we try and restrict who we order dinners from to the restaurants that participate in that program, but we do make exceptions. Then there's also Cava Empanadas in Medford, and they have a truck that we see in farmers market all the time, and it's part of the scene. So, you know, it's just adding to the richness of our community, I would say. And then there's Northwest Pizza. And then for weeks in 2020, the owner donated pizzas to help feed the unhoused. And he knows us from those efforts, and he has our pizza business. So then next slide. There's also a Pizza Kitchen. They underwent a remodel to prevent more open air dining space. And when Sandwich, and then also when Sandwich offers to provide a tasty sandwich to someone in need that we, you know, if we care to add another $10 to our tab, we say yes. So next slide. So lastly, when we were just visiting Ashland back in 2014, we went into Louis and I saw this in the restroom. And that touched me, and that made me like Louis more and choose it when we're in that area looking for a place to eat. So basically it's saying that they have trained their staff to help people who are feeling vulnerable from a sexual predator. So that shows a community that they care. Next slide. So when you do have food that isn't going to paying customers, here are some local resources for you to direct that food to. And this will go a long way in helping our community reach sustainability. So we have people every day of the week helping to feed the unhoused. And we have people that will handle your surplus. And then as Jamie had mentioned before, Rogue Produce has a composting service. And it's, you know, it's important to make use of these resources. And it reinforces our social nature of mutual dependency and responsibility. And that matters just as it mattered in 2020. Last year will not be the last crisis we will ever face together. And strong communities are cohesive communities. And then finally, let me just add my own perspective about going green and doing a cost-benefit analysis. I've made some moves in my own life to go green that maybe didn't make economic sense for me, but the feelings I get every time we use our plug-in hybrid car to run errands, it's totally worth it. When we installed double pane windows at my son's house and installed solar panels at his house and at our house, and when we started a composting service at our house, those all have financial costs. But some things matter more to me than how great my financial decisions are. And sometimes the most inconsequential things please me greatly. Like when my Civic Hybrid went back up to 40 miles per gallon after a service tune-up, when it was just 38 miles per gallon previously. If you can tap in to steal an expression, the irrational exuberance of people feeling good about helping to save the planet, that is a positive feedback loop. So paying a little bit more for food grown locally may not look good on paper, but may make for greater returns and recognition by your suppliers, your employees, your children, your customers, and community for supporting small local farmers. So when you're thinking, when you're making decisions that help the environment or the community, don't keep it a secret. Find ways to lean into fighting and also adapting to climate change and to partner with your customers and your community. Tourists may come and go, but we are here with you. Thanks.
Flavia, may I make, and I promise I won't butt in again. This is my last statement. But I love what you were saying at the end here. And one of the things I remember, I used to work with a fellow by the name of Iacocca, who was the president of Ford Motor Company.
Yep.
Okay, you know who he was. And he was asked one time, and he even said to me, he says, you know, it's these extreme sides. Climate change is there. We know it's there and it's happening, whether it's natural or if we're making more of it to make it happen sooner. That doesn't matter really. What matters is that he said, when I was asked with my Ford Motor Company, do I believe in climate change? He says, you know, that's not a good question to ask me. He says, why don't you ask me, do you want bad air? Do you want bad pollution? You don't want that, whether it's climate change or not. But when you get the extreme sides competing, saying, oh, the world's coming into an end, blah, blah, okay, maybe. And the other sides will say, oh, these are a bunch of silly, stupid people talking that they don't know what they're talking about. Both of them aggravate just about everybody else, because we want this to be clean. We want this to be air clean, the water clean, all the things you're talking about. But when you get these two extreme sides battling with each other, they're hurting themselves. That's all. I'm just bringing that because Iacocca was a great man and he knew what he was talking about. So thank you. I won't say another word, I promise.
Well, I think what Flavia said about the farms is a really good transition point. And Hogan, what do you want to introduce our family farms next?
Since we've got them here, I thought it might be nice to take a few minutes and let Elise talk about what local farms are doing and how they're contributing to all this and the different ways that they can contribute even more. And I really appreciate her being willing to do this because it's kind of on the spot. And we also have Chris Hardy here. And so Chris, if you want to chime in after Elise is done, and we'll have a little discussion about that, and then we'll move on with the program. So Elise, are you ready?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So first I wanted to say, Alan, thank you for all your comments. And I think they're super welcome. And I hope it's not your last comment for the event. So I wanted to also reiterate some of what you said, that I've done a lot of work with Our Family Farms and the GMO campaign, and really learned early on that making things a bipartisan issue is really, really important for success if we want to see change. And that I also spent some time lobbying up in DC, and I went up with this kind of thought that that I want something really different than these other farmers that are growing GMO crops. And what I really came to realize in speaking with them is that we all kind of want the same thing, right? We all have the same needs and cares about our family and our friends and the environment. We all think we're doing the right thing. We just have different ways going about it. And so I think it's really important to keep an open, clear mind. In fact, I think it's kind of funny with the regenerative ag whole thing is that when I was in DC in 2018 or 17, that was Syngenta's motto. They had it in all their literature when I was in there looking, that they were promoting regenerative ag because of, if you chemical spray, then you won't have to till. So it's just a different way of going about it. So I was like dumbfounded that they were using that term regenerative ag. But anyways, just something to note, that I think it's super important to keep it bipartisan and not to get political too much. And that if we want to see big change, because we want to, everybody can participate in the success of this program. And so we need everybody on board to make it happen. So as far as a farm and farmers, some of the things that kind of came to mind during the conversation was one, that I think farms would be a great addition to this, to the organic composting. I know some farms obviously compost on their farm, but also that's a whole, as much as a lot of farms would like to, a lot of farms don't. They say they want to and they want to, but it's a whole nother time consuming thing. And especially in organic ag, there's a lot of monitoring that needs to be done. You almost need like a full-time person just to monitor all the record keeping alone. Just the record keeping is like a part-time person if you want to use your own compost, unless you let it sit for a year on your field. So I think farms would be great. And I think they're great also in that there's less chance of commingling because we're not putting, I can see it being so challenging for restaurants when you're trying to be as efficient and quick as possible to make sure that you don't have cooked food waste or any kind of other scraps in with the scraps that, that you need the clean scraps. So farms are a perfect addition to that. Also seed farms in particular, which is, we're one of the 5th best seed growing regions in this world. That's why we fought to create this GMO-free seed sanctuary here in the Rogue Valley. And seed farms are a great one for the compost addition because they're, waiting till this food gets ripe and then you've got tons of tomatoes, but you only need the seed. And I know a lot of farms have worked, we've collaborated with farms and like food, access and different food banks to try and collect that, but it's very spur of the moment because you have to wait for the right time for the seed and it's not something that can be processed all the way. So compost is a really great, a great way to collaborate with Recology Center on that. I also wanted to mention that there's some work I've done in the past with contract growing with restaurants and with grocery stores with farmers. And I think that helps a lot with food waste because, when you're farming, especially food and for the local community, it's somewhat of a guessing game, right? You're guessing that you're going to sell this much, lettuce or carrots or whatever. And then when it comes down to it, if you don't know exactly what you're growing for, there's a lot of waste that happens. Some farms are like, oh, there's this amazing, magenta lamb's quarters that I know surely that some gourmet chefs are going to love. Well, how much are they really going to sell of that? They don't know until, it's too late. And food is obviously so perishable. So that's one thing. If anyone's interested in contract growing, it's just basically meeting early on in the season, like in the wintertime with farmers and kind of guesstimating what your food use is going to be. And then actually making a commitment to when you want to order food that you're buying from that farm. And obviously all of us have a guessing game, but there has been some really good successes. Work with Cartwrights and with Hidden Valley restaurant or grocery stores. But I guess the biggest thing in farming is just, is you working with restaurants and grocery stores, not just putting the name on the face and getting, a case of kale when you're actually ordering 15 cases a week and you're just saying that you're buying from local farms, but you're only buying a case or two and getting the rest cheaper. So, and I just wanted to mention on Elaine's comment too about the cost of food that that yes, local food is generally a bit more. And I want to mention that, the profit margin in farming is super low in general. Like it's not uncommon to have 4% profit margin in farming. So there's not a lot of wiggle room there. And hopefully if you're doing good marketing and in your restaurants and your stores, then people will know why they want to pay more for local produce. But also just to mention, like my friend down the road, Mary at Whistling Duck, she's been farming for 30 years, I think this year. One of the things that is the most frustrating for her and why she stopped selling so much wholesale was she said, Elise, 28 years ago, I sold a case of kale wholesale for $28.30. And today, 30 years later, it's $28.70. And that's just like unacceptable. And that's some of our stores that we have, on our list of like the best stores in the area. Like that is, to me, is just not okay. She's like, everything else has gone up. The labor's gone up, the cost of living's gone up, the land, taxes, everything. And to not pay farmers like what they need, that's why we have so much hemp and cannabis in the area and less food growing than ever, is because people aren't willing to pay what it costs. So we all really need to rally around that side of it. Yes, we can be as efficient as possible. We can try and mechanize where we can so we don't break our labor's backs and they want to keep farming and keep the cost of goods down. But farming on a small scale with diversity, which is what we want for regenerative ag, takes a lot of time and labor, and that's expensive. So whatever support we can get in marketing that, I also really feel for restaurants because I know it's such a tough time more than ever. So I think there's ways that we could work together and to make it all happen. So yeah, happy to facilitate some of that going on. So yeah. So thank you for listening to my soapbox of farmer costs and all of that. So thanks.
Elise, I really liked what you had to say, and especially what happens with these overages. I know there's a really great example locally here at Southern Oregon University at their Avions. That's the food cafeteria for the college. They have their own farm, and Avions is a business, it's a corporation, and it does look for cost savings. And the manager found that it was more cost effective and it paid the farmer well to grow his tomatoes locally and freeze them. They flash froze them and freeze them, and they had fresh tomatoes for the entire year. Now, that's a large, so it's a larger quantity, which made it affordable, right? Instead of just a seasonal crop. And they have to get their tomatoes from somewhere. So that was what they did. I don't know if that's works on a smaller scale. It is a cafeteria at SOU, and they have a lot of people that go through there on a daily basis. But I also know that we were able to place to help Chris Hardy, who's here, with his squash and that access as well. While removing the seeds, there was squash that was used locally for all the people as well. And I would like to hear more about what it would take. You kind of touched on it, order early, but what does it mean? Let's say a restaurant, or let's say a group of restaurants decided to come together as a co-op to purchase one item that could make their restaurant really stand out and that people would be willing to pay more for, such as a special amaranth, or that's what they do in Chicago. So the Chicago farms found that by going regenerative, they saved the money on chemicals, but they also, and over about 7 years, by the equipment cost and the change out of chemicals, they were able to go to regenerative. But what got them there was these special contracts with these specialty chefs, well-known chefs in Chicago, that wanted their brand of a certain kind of thing. And it was worked on together, some of which was going out and finding the seeds like Chris does, to find that one thing that would make their special dish alive. But maybe in Ashland, since we don't have, I don't know how the numbers work. Maybe Dad, maybe you can speak to that a little bit too. How can we make something like that happen here that might support the farmers and the restaurants, and that the community would be willing to pay what it takes to grow it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Chris can chime in too. I think one of the things is that, farms in general in our area, our growing season, we are planning for the farming season in January. So we need to talk with people about our contract grows like we do on our farm. We do that in December and January. And then because as you know, with everything, seed is a huge shortage right now because everyone's decided to do home gardening, which is great. But it also has impacted the supply in seeds for farmers, and it's harder to buy in mass quantities and at a cost. We can buy little packets now, but luckily on our farm, we grow 95% of the seed that we use, but not every farm's like that. So, and if it's something you're going to specialty for, you might need to source that, someplace else in the world or something, and start to regionally adapt it to our growing region, which takes years of time, but a super fun, cool project to be able to tell the story of in a restaurant, which is great. Yeah, and I think really like building relationships and committing to those relationships in those farms. I see sometimes restaurants and grocery stores wanting to share the love. So they buy a little bit from lots of different farms, but then it's not really enough for any farm to be able to make a living. And so the farmer is just constantly putting in their savings every year to keep going. And then that gets old after a while, and that's not sustainable farming. So I think, farms getting together and having a co-op would be a great idea too on those food farm ideas, so that we can still have crop rotation, but have commitment of, so much produce per season to the stores and restaurants that want to participate. What do you have to say, Chris?
Nice work, Elise. You nailed it as always. Yeah, definitely. What can we do to keep the political energy more free flowing and a conversation than trying to just put the stopgap on things. And like say conventional farmers or GMO farmers or organic farmers, and not make it about that, but make it about local food. And it's really, that's where the transformation happens, is, as we know with the GMO ban initiative in Jackson County in 2014, Josephine County. But it's tough. Like, I reached out to a friend of mine who owns a restaurant here in the area about a month ago, and we had some of the most amazing rock star arugula that was just sweet, overwintered. As everybody knows, we had a super mild winter, and so it didn't, the frost didn't damage the arugula hardly at all. And it was just like you could harvest these bouquets right out of the field. And I called up my buddy and I said, hey, do you want some of this arugula? It's the best, top-notch stuff. He said, yeah, sure. And I'm like, well, how's $5 a pound sound? And he's like, oh man, Chris, like he was upset that I was asking $5 a pound. And I'm just like, all of a sudden I just had this flashback to years ago when we used to sell to a lot of restaurants, and even back to like days in Bozeman, Montana, when we used to get paid $9 and $10 a pound for arugula, and $10 and $11 and $12 a pound for baby salad mix to the restaurants that we sold in Bozeman 20 years ago. And I just, the conversations I've had with Jagger, Blue Fox, and Steve Fry Family Farm, and others, it's
We lose Chris.
We lost him, but the nutshell is it's super sad, because you have these farmers that have dedicated their life for decades to farming, and if you were doing the same thing for decades and making the same amount of money 30 years later or less than, and having to justify why, I think that's the hardest thing, is like, farming is so difficult and also rewarding, but when you like work so hard and then have to justify why you need to sell your crop for a certain amount, it's just kind of degrading after a while, So, but I think there are definitely some positive things that we can take out of it. And I think there are those key players who, want to be those movers and shakers and tell that story and have that marketing at the same time supporting, like I said, not really greenwashing, but to be able to, you don't want to just have the farmer's face on the menu and then they buy just a little bit of it, supplement. Like I know some of the places you're talking about, I work with them on that, and they're mass quantities. I have a hard time believing that all that quantity is coming from that farm. But if that's what's happening now, that is super great and stellar. But when I was working on that, it wasn't necessarily the case.
So I'd like to ask, what would it take to, what's the solution conversation that needs to happen next? You said you like the idea of cooperative farms and restaurants, forming a cooperative of farms and restaurants. So I'm just kind of curious what that might look like, since I've got you here today, and how we might be able to support something like that, because I know that's what they did in Chicago in the outlying farm areas there. The farmers themselves came together, and I think one farmer did it really well. He had the ability to go talk to the famous chefs in Chicago, get their contracts. He had a big enough amount of farm acreage in this area. We might need a cooperative of farms to do that. But I'm just really curious how we can make that happen. And then all the other farmers wanted to know how they were doing this, because they actually made a real wage, and it made it viable for them.
Let me jump in here really quickly, because Chris got back into the room, and I just want to make sure that he finishes what he wanted to say, and then Julie, I think we can come back to that question for both he and Elise. Chris, are you back with us?
Yeah, hi, sorry about that.
No worries, man.
Yeah, the conversation, I don't know where I got cut off before my phone died, but the conversations I've had with Fry and Chris Jagger at Blue Fox and other farmers in the area are that it's the UNFI and the Cisco that is making it difficult. And it doesn't matter if it's an Ashland Food Co-op or anybody that's down with buying organic and organic food. the UNFI truck is usually the one that brings it, and Cisco is getting more and more into organic, and that implies that much of this stuff is coming up from Mexico. And so where we used to sell, like here, I think arugula for $7 a pound, I offered to a local restaurateur here about a month ago the most amazing arugula from our farm, and at $5 a pound, he kind of gave me an attitude, and I was really shocked. um, and I was really I was stunned actually, because this is a buddy of mine who used to work at the Standing Stone, used to be sous chef there under Eric Bell, who many of you know, who's doing good things here in the Valley, and like totally is in our camp, like totally gets it. And here, the restaurant that he now owns in town doesn't seem like it's hurting for business at all, because
Oh, you froze.
Farming prices frozen.
there's issues, right? Like the restaurants are trying to get by, and restaurants are trying to get by too. And I get it, but it's like, I just ended up giving that arugula away for weeks. I had friends every week. I had friends show up. I'm like, there's arugula in the cooler. My housemates, everybody was eating for free this most amazing arugula. And I'm like, yes, triumph. We fed a bunch of people in our community, and we're saving the seeds on that arugula every year. And it's just, you know, I mean, we could plan on some of these things, but we have so many greens going off every year, and I don't know what they're going to be. It's because the scatter seed, you know, seed just falls on the ground, stuff grows. We have the most epic Swiss chard right now that's coming in, and it's been wintered over, and we're going to be saving seeds on that as well. And it's just, you know, sometimes it's planned. I understand that planning is probably the better way to do it. I agree with Elise. And contract growing, I just, you know, we're missing the Siskiyou Sustainable Co-op, the Siskiyou CSA. You know, why is there nobody that's showing up to like organize the farmers around that cooperative model, so that there is the contract growing, so there is that continuity? I believe that's really important. And then we could talk about seeds, but seeds, that's going to precede, that comes from 20, you know, that's last year. Where you got to be thinking a year ahead to be able to have that seed grown and have that seed available. And unfortunately, people like Don Tipping and I and others in the Valley are doing a lot of interesting, rare, unusual types of things that restaurants like to have on their plates. And so I think that's another opportunity. If anybody on this call knows Row 7 Seed Company out east, I believe it's Dan Barber and Stone Barnes, and it's Cornell plant breeder Michael Mazurek there. They're working with together in a collaboration to bring growers and breeders and restaurateurs together to get these varieties into the restaurants, to kind of raise that awareness and that consciousness. And there's a few growers in the Valley here that are interested in that I've been in conversation with. But again, like Row 7 came out with a seed catalog. And so you have like home gardeners who went to the restaurant, they tried this, and now they're like excited about getting some of that seed so they can grow it in their own home garden. And so I think we just need to have creative ideas flowing. We just got to be like in real time flowing with the vision, and the opportunity is just going to be right there in front of us at some point.
Chris, this is Paul. I really want to emphasize what you're saying there about reliability of sourcing. 30 years ago, I was on the board of the North Coast Co-op down in Arcata. That was one of the early co-ops. And in the development of the North Coast Co-op, we had to essentially invest in regional farms in order to ensure a steady supply of organic vegetables year round. So the co-op was providing financing for local growers to put copper around their chard beds to control the slugs and things like that. 10 years ago, we were negotiating with Walmart and Safeway to get them to add organic to their produce sections. And that was their big issue, was we cannot sell something that we can't sell year round. And how do we guarantee year-round supply? And there's a similar issue for restaurants. You know, as a restaurant, we don't reprint our menu every week. A lot of restaurants don't. They reprint their menu 3 or 4 times a year. And yes, you can have local dishes as a chef's special, but to have a dependable menu, if we're going to say locally sourced organic produce, we need to know where are we going to get that locally sourced organic produce year round, and how are we going to collaborate to do that. And the last thing I want to say about that is one of the things Elise mentioned, and that was thinking of each other as collaborators, not competitors. That we are participating in a regional economy. We're not competing with each other. We're competing with Mexico. And so we need to reach out and find out what each other's needs are, and find ways to make sure that everybody gets what they need, because it's all of us that will lift the regional economy.
Amen to that. And that's why we're bringing growers together around these heritage grains. The project that I mentioned earlier, this year we will likely be growing 75 different heritage grains, including the warm weather grains of like the amaranth, quinoa, sorghum, millet, corn varieties. We're growing a lot of the Einkorn and emmer and spelt and rye and oats, and pre-industrial varieties, you know, across the board from these areas. And we need to get growers that are willing to try this out, so that they know how to do it, because it takes work. It isn't just like growing vegetables. And the other thing is that by collaborating and bringing our collective energies together, we can increase the amount of grain seed that is available. And that seems to be the bottleneck right now of these rare grains. You know, we grew probably anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 pounds of each variety last year, in 2019, 2020. And it was a tremendously successful project. However, this year, of the dozen growers that are growing in this relationship to get these seeds back and grow up more of the seed, there's been about 4 farmers, 4 gardeners who have not had good luck, because the birds came down and ate, or some other fact of nature didn't allow allow it to happen. And the chickens got in, and you know, so I had to pull out some reman. Hopefully we're gonna to throw to a friend, and hopefully their crop is gonna be okay. But there's a lot of challenges, and that's why we have to figure these things out, like you know, take one step at a time, and bring people together on a collective vision.
Yeah, and seed source is so important. When we were working with Boulder a decade ago on how to do non-GMO crops on their common green belt around Boulder, we could not source enough non-GMO beet seed to support the beet growers who were supplying the sugar plant in Longmont in growing non-GMO beets. We had to get non-GMO beet seed from Bulgaria.
Oh my God.
Because there wasn't enough non-GMO organic beet seed in the United States to seed a crop on 2,000, 3,000 acres.
99% of all sugar beets grown in the United States commercially are genetically engineered.
That's right.
Roundup resistant.
Yep, and we're coming close to that with soy too.
Cool. I want to kind of go back because Julie had asked a question while Chris was getting reconnected, and I think some of it got addressed, but kind of Julie, if you want to kind of restate, because I think it's a great kind of direction to take now of thinking about next step solution oriented kind of thinking.
Yeah, and Emerging Futures right now is looking at how we can best serve the area. And so this has been a really informative conversation on many levels. One, the recology conversation about how we can look to maybe work with the city and the restaurants and recology to restructure how some of the pickup is currently happening, as well as increasing that pickup. And what conversation does that need, as well as, you know, what are the next steps with growers, breeders, and restaurants, as you pointed out, Chris, you know, to actually, you know, take the time, even if it takes 2 years to develop this. I would imagine some of our restaurants in town, we have some really good chefs, and we have some, and that this is a great advertising tool to be able to say it's locally grown, it comes from regenerative agriculture, a regenerative agricultural farm, and this grain was grown for our restaurant special for this dish. And, you know, and they've worked with a group of farmers, and maybe some other restaurants, they wouldn't have the same specialty grain because that would be that restaurant's earmark, but maybe the restaurant next door, you know, makes a point of contracting with Chris for whatever the spring season greens are. You know, this year it's arugula, next year it's spinach, but whatever that surplus is, and they just know that they're gonna, you know, that you guys are gonna talk, and that becomes something they offer. Like, I look forward every year to going to Shop and Cart and getting my Wild Roots spinach. They just sold out, and I was like, oh, I didn't buy enough bags of it, you know, because it's so good and it's growing locally. And now I got to wait for the farmer's market, and you know, it was just like, but boy, it was so good. My family just, they said, put the whole bag in the pot, you know. It's like, it is just so yummy. And
Well,
so to be able to know you're getting that and look forward to it, and to know that your favorite restaurant is looking forward to that for you, I think is a marketing. I know it's working in Chicago and New York. Why not Ashland?
I think one of the coolest things on that note that I get excited about are Barking Moon carrots. And Elise knows this already. I'm sure that they had a crop failure this year. Josh did. And so who was it, Elise, that stepped in? What farm? What farm do you know who who supplied the bulk of the carrots, the lion's share this year?
No, I don't know.
It was
I mean,
another farm in the Applegate, anyhow, and their carrots made it to the markets. So I believe it's like 5-pound bag, 10-pound bags.
it might be, I don't know, it might be Sun Spirit.
Sun Spirit, exactly. That's so like Shop and Cart, you know, they had them for a while, but that's one of those things that it's like, when it's time, when it's January, like, go get bags of those carrots, because they're not going to last that long. But that, it's just great to know that Sun Spirit was there to step in and was able to supply the food co-op and Shop and Cart with those amazing fresh market carrots, and not like the, you know, the Earthbound Farms big bulk bags, which are a different type of carrot than, you know, these are eating carrots, which are the most delicious ones.
They were very, very good. And I also look forward every year to the spring onions, which are almost, you know, which have just showed up at the co-op, and they're local as well. And, you know, anyways, I could go
But
on
if
and on
we could
about my
create
fresh
some type of a buzz, like a similar type of buzz around those carrots, where people, you know, I know so many mothers who are so excited, our house included, you know, the 2 mothers that I live with, their kids just love those carrots. And when it comes that time, everybody's, hey, are those carrots out there on the shelves yet? You know, and if we could work towards something that just had this buzz where people are, hey, is it, you know, January 1st is when I've heard those carrots are going to hit the shelves, or whatever it is.
And I don't know what kind of, I signed up for the winter CSA with Maud Powell. And the carrots that I got every 2 weeks were out of this world sweet. They were the best carrots ever. So yeah, how do we develop a market for the things we know we can grow and make it bigger as well, and make it affordable for both sides? Anyhow, Elaine, I'd like to bring her into the conversation too.
Julie, hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on just a minute. So yeah, we're gonna bring Elaine in just a minute, but I think Paul had a couple of things that he wanted to say about the one-on-one consultations, and I think this kind of all of these things that everybody's talking about, if we go back to those principles of a regenerative economy that Paul was talking about, they're all aspects of that. And those are things that we need to work on together as we move forward. So Paul, why don't you jump in and talk about those programs really quickly? And then Elaine, thank you for hanging on. We'll get to you in just a second.
If you can bring up that other set of slides there. Elaine had her finger on the pulse also when she said that what restaurateurs require right now is one-on-one, in-person, in their environment, to share these principles and possibilities and practices with them. And so with support from DEQ, Emerging Futures has created a calculator which we developed for individuals in their restaurants, in their residences, but we're going to adapt a second version for use in restaurants. And where this came from was a discovery process that I developed for use with large institutions like prisons and hospitals and schools that had very large waste streams. And we were looking at the full range of sustainability, not just the food aspects, but really the whole materials flow, resources, energy, water, waste, food source, and all of that. And so what we did was we developed what we called a checklist to review the principles and practices of sustainability. Next slide. And so what we did was we converted it to a calculator specifically for food. Next slide. If you could just kind of keep going every time I slow down. And what we look at is how many people eat food from your kitchen, how many people buy or harvest food for the kitchen, how many days a week does someone buy or harvest food. And then we look at different food types: meat, beef, poultry, fish, grains, fruits and vegetables, dairy, so that people can look at the different types of food that flow through their kitchen or their restaurant. And how often do you dispose? Is it every day, once a week, once a month, that sort of thing? We compile all this into calculations so that people then receive an email follow-up that tells them, based on their estimates, total wasted food per person in your household. And in this example would be 30 pounds. The restaurant obviously would be more, but the wasted food in your household for the year is 15 pounds. And then what is that costing you? In this example, $260 a year. If you can go on to the next slide. What that enabled, that one. What that enables us to do then is to do sample calculations, and we're working closely with Elaine here to get good numbers for the different regions, but to say, okay, on your annual grocery bill, if you reduced your waste by 10%, you'd save $26 a year, or it might be $260. Also, if you reduce your waste by 10%, you save 500 pounds of CO2, which then translates to how many tons a year and how many car equivalents per year. And that's a follow-up email that comes to whatever email address they put into the calculator form that allows people to really get a handle on what they can measure and what they can manage to save money and contribute to an overall reduction in climate change. And just as an aside, we were talking about climate change earlier. I love what Alan said. It doesn't matter what you attribute as the cause of climate change. Climate change is real. And if you want evidence for that this year, we were looking at the Talent Irrigation District statistics. For the Talent Irrigation District, the 4 reservoirs that serve TID are at 20% of their normal level, 20%. And so it's going to be a really dry summer. Next slide. And so when we meet with people one-on-one, we're going to take these same principles and invite them to consider what they're doing for recycling, types of packaging, monitoring of portion size or place size, takeout containers. Where do they get them? Are they biodegradable? Composting vegetables, meat, paper, other things that they might be composting. Unfortunately, most of the compostable utensils aren't. And in a lot of food establishments like the Co-op, when they have bins and they have people supposedly putting their compostable and non-compostable and recyclable materials into the bins, the contamination, cross-contamination is so overwhelming that it all goes to the landfill anyway. So we want to monitor that kind of thing. And cooking oil, do you donate food? Do you have seasonal ingredients that are locally sourced? How do you utilize your space, and how can we help you better design your space? And then lastly, water flow, and how does water flow through your institution? Could you be saving money on water? Are you using non-toxic or less toxic, less caustic chemicals and powders? How do you involve your staff? In that context, we talk about incentives and whether or not they're offering profit sharing and employee stock ownership. Is environmental or sustainability oriented efficiency part of your staff evaluations, particularly for management personnel? Do they allow time for staff to focus on resource efficiency? What kind of incentive programs do they have? And do they aspire to zero waste? So these are the kinds of questions that, and really what we call it is a discovery process, because we're not coming in like an audit, like you're doing this wrong and you have to fix this or bad things are going to happen, but more like, what can we discover here that are opportunities for you to become the kind of institution that your employees feel good about working, that they want to come to work because they get to participate in these fun incentives, and because the consumers and customers are acknowledging them because of their zero waste or waste zero certification decal in the window and that sort of thing, because they're listed in the business directory, and people who coming in from town, from out of town, look at the directory and go, I want to patronize these establishments because they match my values. That's what we're moving towards. So we were going to do this as a 1 hour breakout session, but in the interest of time, if you'll just go to the last slide there, Chris, I think I'll turn you back to Hogan. Oh, Hogan, you're running the slides, sorry. I'll turn you back over to Hogan to introduce Elaine. Oh, and of course, in follow-up, we will give links to that calculator so that everybody can do that for themselves.
Thank you, Paul. That was impressive how quickly you did that one.
Yeah, it's cruel to
right.
ask a former college professor to do something in 5 minutes, but I'm learning.
Tell me about it. I know how that goes. All right, Elaine, if you would like to come on and kind of share some thoughts with us, it'd be great to hear what your impressions of this have been. And yeah.
Thanks, Hogan. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to take about 5 minutes. First of all, I just want to thank you all for inviting me to participate today. It's been really interesting and exciting to hear this kind of robust conversation about the complexities of our food system and the complexities of the problems that we face in developing sustainable food systems. There are obviously big questions. I heard all kinds of interesting and creative ideas thrown out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you all do with them. I want to take a moment to pivot back to prevention, because that's DEQ's priority, and I want to just jump off from Paul's discussion about the calculator. One of the things that we have done at DEQ in the last year is a fair amount of market research to try to develop consumer messaging around preventing food waste. And one of the things that we learned was that the most effective messaging to convince people to prevent food waste was reminding them how much money they waste when they waste food. So the calculator that Paul and his group are developing is a really important piece of that puzzle, to show people very directly the kinds of money savings that they can achieve in their households by reducing food waste. This also connects to some of the work that we heard from Chris Byrne early on about the business case in restaurants for preventing food waste. So I just that's mainly what I wanted to highlight is and actually I wanted to just pivot back to a couple of things that Flavia mentioned in her presentation that I think are quite important. She noted that we think that anywhere from 25 to 40% of all the food grown or imported into the United States ends up being wasted. And she also noted that in big developed countries like the US, most of that waste is occurring at the consumer end of the supply chain. And so that means that efforts to address food waste prevention at the household level and at the restaurant level are quite important. Moreover, Flavia also mentioned the important work of Paul Hawken in his book Drawdown, and I know that many of you are very, very familiar with Drawdown. But for those of you who aren't, I just wanted to highlight the fact that in Drawdown, Paul Hawken and his small army of researchers ranked the top 100 easy climate change solutions that we could implement tomorrow. And in third place on that list of 100 is preventing food waste in the first place. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to emphasize how important from a climate change perspective it is that we focus on preventing food waste. At the same time, I don't want to lose sight of all of the other important sustainability issues that you talked about today. And likewise, at the end of the day, even if we achieved 100% perfection in preventing food waste, we will have organic material that has to be disposed. And so, I applaud the good work that Recology is doing in promoting collection of compost in your area. So I'm not going to take up a boatload of your time. This has been really interesting and exciting for me, and I just applaud all of the work that you all are engaged in. And I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Elaine, it's Paul again. I just want to acknowledge that Chris Byrne is on the call with us, and he's done a tremendous amount of work on the back end to make the calculator work. He's been very creative. And Angelina Cook, who couldn't join us because of technical difficulties, is going to be doing a lot of the one-on-one visits to the restaurants. And of course, Julie has been our unabashed enthusiast out there knocking on doors out. And now that she's fully vaccinated, she's really developing wonderful liaison with the various restaurants. And so we really do have a diverse and enthusiastic team working together to bring this calculator into being.
And Elaine, I want to share one thing that I was inspired by Bend and their little films they had people do. So I actually made one in my living room that Hogan can put up on our Facebook. But one of the things that I started calculating based on these calculations was I save $500 a year by making my own vegetable broth. So all my organic, and I only buy organic vegetable scraps, go in my freezer. When the bag gets really big, it goes in the pot. I boil it. That goes in a jar. Those jars go into my soup. And it saves me $500 in buying it in the first place. But think about, and I don't know how to measure yet, Paul, you can help me with this, how many packages I saved, how much transportation I saved, because I used to buy about 10 boxes of vegetable broth a month, and it's only vegetable broth is onions and carrots, and my vegetable broth has got, butternut squash and locally grown, parsnips in it. So, anyways, I'm done. But $500, that's a lot. And I have fun doing it.
So thank you guys. And thanks, Elaine, for your thoughts. We have about 5 minutes left in this schedule. I'm going to try and pull up this poll that I worked up, which is just a simple couple of questions that will help us kind of form better workshops as we move forward. Not that this one hasn't been great, but we always want to improve on things. So if you guys bear with me, I haven't done a poll before. I'm going to launch it and give you guys a few minutes to just go through. Most of them are just multiple choice. Won't take very long at all. Let's see.
It's Paul here. I have to jump off to onto another call right at noon. So I just want to say how wonderful this has been to have the participation from each and every one of you. Just gold nuggets and nourishing morsels throughout the morning. Special thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Great. Yeah. And I just want to echo that. I want to thank all you guys for participating and thank the Emerging Futures, the EF team for all their work on this. I think it's come together really well. And thank you guys. It's been great. You've taught me a lot more about food, which I appreciate.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank
And
you,
please
everybody.
make sure
Bye,
if you get a
everybody.
chance, visit
Thank
our
you,
website.
Maria.
You can
Thank
check
you,
out our
Amy.
programs.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Hogan. Thank you, Paul. Have a great day.